Christmas is drawing near, and that means it's the caroling season. And today we're to enjoy the melody and the lyrics of these most beloved of all Christmas songs. Stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
This is Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program discussing the important crossroad of religion in life, produced by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, welcoming you to this Yuletide edition of the program. And today we're going to tune our hearts and our ears to the beloved music that comes from many centuries ago, the Christmas carols. Helping us in the appreciation of this will be Kevin McClure, Director of Chapel Music at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Singing will be Cindy Coleman and Kristen Hamilton Sutherland of the Chapel Choir at the seminary, and Ron Floyd, Associate Pastor at Westminster Presbyterian Church. They'll be opening the program with In Dulce Jubilo.
Christian friends, rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now ye need not fear the grave. Jesus Christ was born to save. Calls you one and calls you all to gain the everlasting hope. Christ was born to save. Christ was born to save.
Well, that was a sweet song indeed. And I guess that literally translates that, doesn't it, Kevin?
Indeed it does. In Dulce Jubilo.
And how far back does that particular song go?
Well, this song is the oldest one we'll do for you today. And it goes back, we believe, to the early 1300s. There's a account of this song. We think it may be the origin of this song. You can judge for yourself. A German monk named Heinrich Suso, well-read, well-educated student of Meister Eckhart, often meditated and often said he had visions. And in this particular vision, angels came to him to cheer him up. He was having a rough day, and the angel said, you need something to cheer you up. We have this song. And they sang to him. And it goes further than that. They danced, and they said, come on, let's dance and sing, and the whole thing.
And carols were originally danced otherwise, weren't they?
We think so. There's lots of evidence that some of the early carols were used in processionals inside churches, outside of churches. And so in that way, were a form of dance music.
So the origin of carols goes back at least to the 13th century.
Yes, actually probably a little further back. It depends on if you think the French courtly dance, carole, was the origin of the carol. That can push it back into the 12th century.
The French word is what?
Carole.
Which means carol, and that's where we get the term.
That's where we get it.
All right. Well, give us a little bit of a sense of what's happened since those beginnings.
Well, this song, what we just sang, the tune is this old source from the 14th century, and of course, anything that's been around this long will go through changes, and people have taken this song and changed it and reharmonized it and arranged it for instruments, and there's settings in the 16th century with brass choirs and whole singing choirs in different parts of the church singing antiphonally. So of course, once you have something good, you have to mess with it, you know, and try and improve upon it, or at least make it variable. the comparison with the next piece is interesting because this next piece that we'll do in a moment, the Nova Nova, is a song about the angel Gabriel coming to Mary. And this, in a way, is more authentic old than the one we just did, where the tune is originally old, but the harmonization is actually from the 50s. And this one will do it just as we have it. And someone decided that they had a beautiful tune they heard out in the street and decided to write down in their book just by chance. And by chance, someone dug up this book in our century, and we have this. So there's a huge repertoire of people's songs. And that's one of the characteristics of carols. Often they're the people's song and not what you heard in the church.
Okay, now that's interesting. And it didn't start out in the church, but finally got into the worship service.
And in fact, even into this century, carols were regarded as sort of a little bit below grade for most hymnals. And the highbrow sort who put these things together didn't see fit to put them in. Even into the World War II, then in that era of hymnals, you begin to see carols really flowering. And of course now you can't have a hymnal without a couple dozen carols.
So, for instance, you were mentioning the next song. You'll be singing two others before the break. What's the third one that you'll be singing this morning?
The third one is Sussex Carol, and this is another one of these things we don't know where it came from. Vaughan Williams, the famous composer, was multi-talented. He did lots of things, but one of his great gifts to us was he was one of these folks who went out into the field, literally collecting folk tunes. And this is one from a certain Mrs. Verrill of Monk's Gate, Sussex. And he got this wonderful carol from her in 1904. He wrote it down and published it. And if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't have this tune.
So you had Ralph Vaughan Williams is a famous composer, I mean, otherwise, and here he applies himself to something that's become very popular.
In fact, this is a phenomenon in the 19th and early 20th century when people started considering their folk roots of their own country as a serious matter, something really to be valued and studied.
We have the English represented, we have the German represented, it was the one of them from France, or you said, I think, that the earliest was from France.
Right.
What other countries have produced carols?
Well, any Christian country these days has produced its own carols.
They continue to be written, in
They
other words.
continue to be written, and that's a good point. Although the bulk of our repertoire is the English folk repertoire, Sussex Carol, for instance.
Okay, and you have, I know in America you had O Little Town of Bethlehem by Phillips Brooks, who was Episcopal rector in Boston, and so it's come to this country as well.
Yes, indeed. And one of the songs we'll sing after the break is, in fact, an Afro-American spiritual. So that's yet another source, a different folk source, if you will.
All right. I think we need, at this point, because we are coming up on the break before long, to have you share with us then these two that you mentioned, Nova Nova and the Sussex Carol, and after that's over, we'll take a pause and then come back again.
Good.
Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva. Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva.
Gabriel of high degree, he came down from Trinity to Nazareth in Galilee. Nova, Nova,
Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva. Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva.
He met a maiden in a place, he kneeled down afore her face. He said, Hail Mary, full of grace, Nova, Nova.
Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva. Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva.
When the maiden heard tell of this, she was full sore abashed her ways, and weened that she had done amiss. Nova, Nova.
Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva. Nova, Nova, ave vitex Eva.
Then said the angel, dread not thou, ye shall conceive in our virtue a child whose name shall be Jesus. Nova, 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 Ave Vitex Eva. Nova, Nova, Ave Vitex Eva.
Christmas night, O Christians, sing to hear the news the angels bring. News of great joy, news of great mirth, news of the merciful King's birth. Then why should we on earth be so sad, since our Redeemer made us glad? Then why should we on earth be so sad, since our Redeemer made us glad? When from our sin he set us free, all for to gain our liberty.
When sin departs before his grace, then life and health come in its place. When sin departs before his grace, then life and health come in its place. Angels and all with joy may sing, all for to see the newborn King.
For out of darkness we have light, which made the angels sing this night. For out of darkness we have light, which made the angels sing this night. Glory to God and peace to all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627, because serving Austin means serving you.
Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue, where today we are blessed with the music of Christmas carols. And helping us in this appreciation are Presbyterian folks. We have, first of all, at the keyboard and the director of the chapel choir at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, Kevin McClure. We have from that chapel choir also Cindy Coleman, Kristen Hamilton Sutherland, and Ron Floyd, Associate Pastor at Westminster Presbyterian Church. As we begin the second half, I understand that you're bringing us Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Yes.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to our newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join
light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. But he lays his glory by, born that we no more may die, born to raise us from the earth, born to give a second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
Well, hark indeed. That's a marvelous way to be celebrating the season that we're into, as far as what from Christians is the birth of a Savior, and from people of all cultures is an appreciation of what the Prince of Peace means. And I'd like to have you just share a little bit with us about what you know of the origins of what you just sung, Kevin.
Well, this is an example of how a tune and a text are not found together at the beginning, and they are looking for each other and eventually find each other. You should always start with a text, I think, and this is a Charles Wesley text, as I think many people would know. Charles Wesley, the brother of John Wesley, wrote...
The founders of the Methodist movement and church?
Indeed. Patron saint of Methodism, if they had patron saints. And Charles Wesley wrote variably 5,000 hymns, 6,000 hymns, 8,000 hymns. I've seen all kinds of figures to how many hymns. It's an enormous number, one every day at least, for most of his adult life. But this is the most popular Charles Wesley hymn. It's in just about any Christian hymnal you'll find. You'll have this one. Luckily for us, the original 10 verses have been pared down a little bit for our shorter attention spans.
In a television age where we have kind of
that television
sound
age
bites.
thing. Yes, that's the problem. And the original first line was not what we recognize. Hark how all the welkin rings, glory to the King of Kings. It doesn't quite have the ring that Hark the Herald Angels Sing does. And someone came along and cleaned that up for Charles Wesley, which he wouldn't have appreciated, but I think we all do.
Okay. And then we've got a couple of others that you mentioned earlier in the show that have some American origins. Which one will that be?
We'll do Rise Up, Shepherd, and Follow. Could I follow on with a note about the music of the Hark the Herald Angels Sing?
Sure.
That's interesting, too.
Please.
The tune name is Mendelssohn, and indeed that's Felix Mendelssohn we're talking about. And this tune was originally the second movement of a work for male chorus and brass, written in 1840 for a celebration of the 400th anniversary of printing. What does this have to do with Hark the Herald Angels Sing? It seems completely separate. And Mendelssohn was very happy with the tune, and he even wrote to his publisher saying, we need to find another use for this. I think this is a great tune, and I think it has possibilities for another use, but certainly not sacred use. You know, something nationalistic, you know, militaristic.
Nothing
jolly.
Christmas at all about it.
No, this is not a sacred tune. So Mendelssohn got it wrong, also.
All right.
And actually, it was after Mendelssohn's death when someone put the two together, a fellow named Cummings in the 1850s. And now, of course, they're inseparable.
All right. Well, that's really significant as to how out of a secular background you can have what has become so precious to people of faith.
Indeed. And one more example of surprise in the background of this, one of the first tunes that was associated with Hark the Herald Angels Sing was the Easter hymn. So, hark the herald angels sing, alleluia, of all things.
All right. Got moved across the liturgical year.
And this one was considered sort of the parallel, the Christmas parallel to that Easter hymn. So they sang to the same tune.
I see.
Made sense.
Okay, now we're coming to two others that you're going to be sharing with us.
The Rise Up, Shepherd, and Follow, printed in 1867, just after the Civil War, as a Christmas plantation song. And as you can guess, this is what the slaves sang. And I mentioned earlier about people being interested in the 19th century in the folk heritage, and this is an example of one of the fortunate work of someone who's so interested in what was considered below respectable interest at one time. And a gentleman did go, and mainly among the islands off Georgia and South Carolina, to hear what they were actually singing. And that's why we have Rise Up, Shepherd, and Follow, and all kinds of other songs that were folk songs that might otherwise have been lost. I've never seen a reference to this explanation, but rise up and shepherd and follow, there's a star in the east, and leave your flocks, you'll forget your herds. I wonder if it's an Underground Railroad reference.
Oh, sure.
It's just speculation on my part.
That oftentimes was a subtext of spirituals, an escape to the north and Canada and so on.
Right.
Now, your last song that you're going to be singing will be probably the best known of all.
Silent Night. And I think we all have an idea that traditional story of a little town in Austria in 1818, Christmas Eve, the organ breaks down, and so the assistant pastor and the assistant organist get their heads together and come up with something that'll work. And in the event, the priest sang the melody, and the organist sang a bass part and played guitar, and that's how it happened. Although it took a while for that to get around. And one story, you can never track these things down terribly well, you know. We didn't have the documentation we have today, but the story was that the guy who came to fix the organ shortly after Christmas Eve heard it and said, "This is great, can I have a copy?" And so Franz Gruber, the music man, said, "Sure," and he gave a copy, didn't even bother to sign it.
To the organ repairman.
To the organ repairman, you know. Take this as gospel as you wish, or not, but that's one story that goes. But certainly it circulated around a lot. And he didn't sign many of these copies, so there was a controversy about who it actually belonged to, such that, and I just found this out digging for this program, the Emperor Wilhelm Friedrich decided in the 1850s he needed to find out where this thing came from. And they thought, this sounds like Michael Haydn, one of the finest composers of the beginning of the 19th century.
All right.
So they say, well, where did Michael Haydn work? He worked at Salzburg Cathedral. Let's go to Salzburg Cathedral. And so one boy in the choir there happened to be Franz Gruber's son. And that's how they traced it back to
Oh, my
the
word.
original.
Well, you've done a little detective work. It's a mystery like unto the, that of the Trinity itself. We're grateful for your sharing that with us. We would like to also take note that even though we hear this played and sung in malls and secular settings, that within this setting on Austin Faith Dialogue, it has a way of lifting our spirits and focusing on what is really the season is about and the carols are about. And we want to thank you folks for being with us today and sharing your gifts. And we're looking forward to wishing everyone a joyful and blessed season, as now we hear Rise Up, Shepherds, and Follow, and Silent Night.
There's a star in the east on Christmas morn. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. It will lead to the place where the Christ was born. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow, follow. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow the star of Bethlehem. Rise up, shepherd, and follow.
If you take good heed to the angel's words,
Rise up, shepherd, and follow.
you'll forget your flocks, you'll forget your herds.
Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow, follow. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow the star of Bethlehem. Rise up, shepherd.